Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Senator Unger for initiating this so important committee, and for Senator Cookman, who I certainly know better as Judge Cookman, who has supported and believed in children throughout West Virginia. So thank you both for supporting our efforts. I'd like to begin by talking about, we're going to look at two different assessment tools and how they come together so that we can start looking at children, looking at young adults, and looking at adults all together. But I'm going to begin with, you can see on the PowerPoint, the two young women. I want you kind of to remember their faces as we go through this. But I do have someone with me today, Breauna Heater. Breauna, what? Heater, yeah. Okay, was with us at Crittenton Services about 5 years ago. She had her daughter with us. Breauna and I have had the opportunity to speak several times on Capitol Hill at senatorial foster care caucuses regarding really seriously looking at the juvenile justice system in relationship to young women, and having kids who are coming into the system, regardless of where they're coming in, to be assessed properly. Breauna is a West Virginia girl, and I would like for her just to take a few minutes to tell you a little bit about her story.
Hi, I was born and raised in Upshur County, Buchanan, West Virginia. At the age of 10, I had started enduring some difficult parts of my life. I had moved in with my father, which is a registered sex offender. We started making methamphetamines. He actually showed me how to make it. He actually took me out of school, homeschooled me so I could be at home with him. At the age of 14, I had got pregnant. I was on probation at the time for fighting. I had got pregnant and I was failing drug tests repeatedly for meth. I had got taken from my mom and put into a juvenile justice system. I was treated like a criminal. I was in Presley Ridge, White Oak for 40 days, and they sent me to a shelter because they thought I'd run. After they found out I was pregnant, I was able to go to Crittenton. And I had opened up to my therapist and let her know that, all the stuff I had to endure. I was addicted to meth at the very young age. I was pregnant by a 22-year-old man, and I was very lost. Crittenton had helped me find my way, and I had my daughter there. We left when she was 2 months old, and we moved to the state of Florida. We are currently there. I'm thinking about moving back home, though. I've came a long way, but I still have struggles daily. Not from the addiction, but I don't want to turn back to drugs, but I still have, I don't want to call it a mental illness from it, but I do endure something every day from what happened to me in my past. I wasn't really raised as a child. I never attended high school. I was really, like I said, treated like a criminal, but I was really just a young girl lost. I didn't know really what to do. I chose to keep my daughter, and if it wasn't for Crittenton, I would not have no mother experience. When I moved to Florida, it's a little bit of a fast life, so I'm still working on that, seeing if I want to stay down there. I went to college, and I don't know if I want to move back home just because of what I had to endure when I was younger, but considering I'm older, more responsible, and I have a young daughter of my own, I just want to give her the best life possible. And West Virginia is not a bad state. It really isn't. It's just parents in the state of West Virginia it's really not their fault. I'm not going to blame them because they never had help when they were my age. So they had to endure, something I had to endure, but I just want to make it sure that everyone knows that when I was through in juvenile justice system, I wasn't no criminal. I was just a young girl that wasn't raised properly. I didn't have role models. I didn't have people to look after me. I was called horrible names. I had to endure a lot of stuff that I didn't ask for. My ACE score is 10. My daughter's 0. I'm planning on keeping my daughter's 0. But I definitely want to put a bright light on children in West Virginia. Don't ask for a lot. They have to endure. and they're just thrown in the juvenile justice system as criminals, and that's not the case because they're not criminals. They don't choose to have to endure these things they go through. At a very young age, we're not smart enough to know what's really right and what's really wrong. I mean, 14, yes, I do know better, but then again, I was very young. But I just want to thank having the opportunity to come here and speak. I've spoke before. I'm kind of nervous though. But I do want to thank Crittenton Services. They are very helpful. And if it wasn't for them, I would not be able to open up to you guys like I did today.
All right, you heard Breauna talk about her ACE score, so I'm going to focus on that for a while. In the late 1990s, a group of physicians from San Diego, one in particular, Dr. Folletti, were operating an obesity clinic. One of the things that Dr. Folletti noticed is individuals who had could lose 100 pounds and never gain it back, and some individuals would quickly gain it back. So he started trying to figure out what was the cause of some people being able to lose weight and keep it off and some not. And he was starting to see a trend regarding individuals who had adverse childhood experiences, which basically is some type of experience under the age of 18 that was traumatic to the individual. So what he did with a bunch of researchers at a very large HMO, Kaiser Permanente, you might have heard of them, embedded 10 questions into the basic medical social history of all the participants. So at the end result, with those 10 questions, they had over 17,000 recipients. Then they took that data and began analyzing it. And as they analyzed it, they start finding very specific trends. What they noticed was the more experience an individual had regarding their traumas in their early life, the greater likelihood of more long-term health elements. So basically, if you had, the ACE is basically, I put one in your packet so you can see the actual ACE survey. You can take it at your leisure. You'll see that the questions are broken up into 3 categories regarding abuse, family dysfunction, and neglect. And it would be interesting for you all just to look and when you don't have to share the results, but to actually take the test. Individuals with higher scores of 6 or more have greater usage of health care as adults and actually have much more complicated health care issues. What ended up was we met with Dr. Folletti. The Crittenton family of agencies consists of 28 agencies across the country. We represent 33 states. We had an opportunity to meet with Dr. Folletti to discuss looking at our population in relationship to the population that they surveyed in San Diego. In San Diego, the population was predominantly Caucasian. It was a very homogeneous population. The majority of the people were educational at 14 years, which is, pretty advanced. It was a very middle to upper middle class community, but yet the evidence showed that the higher the score, the greater the impact long-term health care, which was all they were capable of pulling out from all the health care information of the folks who participated in the survey. So in May, well, actually it was in probably March of last year, we met with Dr. Folletti in Chicago. And we decided that we were going to take a picture of the Crittentons across the country, and we were going to do a pilot. We were going to do the ACE survey. We were going to take all the Crittentons and have them, for as many participants in their programs at any given time during that 1 week, and give them the ACE survey, and then collect the data and look at it. Dr. Folletti remained as our advisor and helped us as we analyzed all of the information that we received. What we did, we also attached a demographic section to the pilot so that we could see exactly what these individuals look like. So we would know how they entered the system, their age, etc. They could do the questionnaires online, or we had hard copies. We used, our Crittenton in West Virginia, we used all current clients, but you could have also used former clients. And parents had the opportunity, you can do the ACE study on your child. That's Alexis. Mom did Alexis's for me last night, so we could actually look and see where Alexis is regarding trauma in her life. So out of our results, what we ended up was 18 states participated in the survey, and you'll see that, of course, West Virginia is one of them. And I need to be honest with you, when we got our data back, they did give me the West Virginia raw data, but I never really pulled it out and looked at it until after my discussion with Senator Unger, and I thought, I should really see exactly how West Virginia fared, because I knew what the national survey information was. In October, we had the opportunity to present this information in a congressional briefing in DC, which was really well received by individuals, for example, like the American Pediatric Society, because this is an instrument that can be used for families who are just coming in for their first new baby visits. It can show that there's indicators of problems that could occur and help build support systems around young families. So we did pull the West Virginia information, and I have to tell you it was a bit surprising. So just for West Virginia, we did about 250 participants. Crittenton, you all probably know us for our residential program, but our community home-based service is very large. We have over 500 children and families. We're serving in 18 counties. So we were able to pull a fair amount of participants for the survey during this period. And you can see that 59% of them were female and 41% were male. And basically, we're looking at predominantly the 18 northern counties. However, our residential program does serve the whole state, so I'm sure there were some individuals there who were from other parts of the state. You can see what the national Crittenton results were, and then the original ACE study from San Diego with the 17,000 participants. Well, if you look at the diagram of the age, ironically, the darker color are West Virginia. The majority of our clients were over the age of 21 who took the test. I think that kind of surprised me, and you can see how we kind of pan out. Remember, this is the test that reflects anything that happened to you from birth to 18. Race, very reflective of who West Virginia is. Of course, it was predominantly white, but if you also look at the original ACE study, that information also reflected accordingly. We looked at where these kids came from and their families came from, and I think I really thought a lot of them would have come through the office of the Department of Health and Human Resources, but in West Virginia, the majority of them were through family and friends, referred into services. And then, of course, the second one was juvenile court, probation, and the police, and the third one was a self-referral. And this is what I just kind of found outstanding. What you're going to see is the far right cylinder, the lightest color, represents West Virginia. We're going to look quickly at each of the 10 categories of the questions. So the pale pink in the first one is regarding emotional or psychological abuse. And out of those 250 recipients, 53% scored that this a yes, which means it was relevant to their lives. And now look at that in comparison to the darkest cylinder, which is on your far left. That is the actual ACE study, and the middle cylinder is the Crittenton study that's reflective of the 28 Crittentons who participated. Physical abuse, 42%, which is the light blue. Sexual abuse, 26%. I am by trade a therapist, and I've been in the field for 30 years, and I truly feel that 26% is probably not very reflective of folks being honest. I think it's very difficult for people to disclose sexual abuse. I think we truly see just the very top of the iceberg. So I would question that. I would have to guess in West Virginia it would be higher. Caregiver incarceration in West Virginia was at 36%. Emotional and psychological abuse, 53%. Physical abuse, 42%. Did it the wrong way, excuse me. Mothers treated violently, 46%. And then mental illness, which was substantially higher from the original study and the Crittenton study, at 56%. Loss of biological parent or being raised in a one-person family member home, an outstanding 72%, and substance abuse at a 55%. So, as you can see, for West Virginia, this is pretty outstanding data. The majority of these people are receiving outpatient services. They're not in residential care. So how common are these ACEs scores? So in West Virginia, 93% of who we tested had one or more ACEs. And when I say one or more ACEs, they scored yes on one of those 10 questions. 65% scored a 4 or more, and 44% was 6 or plus, which is extremely a significant number. So what does this really prove? Basically, what we're looking at is that the early childhood experiences do affect a person's health and well-being. And child well-being is crucial to long-term expectations and prosperity of an individual. The key part of this study, I think, that really kind of is really outstanding, and this is from the CDC website, and one of the big issues, the CDC has adopted this study. Please be aware that there are many states who have incorporated the ACE study into their, I'm going to call it EPSDT, Early Periodic Childhood Screening and Detection, is that? So they are universally collecting it. This is kind of newer to West Virginia, and I would hope that eventually we too would embrace this study as a way of early detection for young families. But when you look at the findings, there's a significant increase from alcoholism, obesity, adolescent pregnancy, smoking, liver disease, heart disease, the more traumatic the situation. So when you look at someone like Breauna, who was just here with a 10, without intervention, she would be set up for a very, very difficult road ahead of her. In addition to that, I mean, no matter what side of the fence you're thinking, the cost to society will be large, where if you put intervention on the early end so that she can resolve many of her issues, you're going to have a different outcome. And you can see what's important is how she parents her daughter. And I'm going to talk more of that. So basically what you're looking at is if you have a 0 ACEs score, so if you all just took that test right now and you had a 1 or a 2 or a 0, you know, if you take good care of yourself, you probably have that wonderful 80-year plus life expectancy. If your ACE score is 6 or plus, that drops you down to 60-year life expectancy. And this is taken all over the survey in San Diego. And when you think about it, West Virginia, 44% of the participants in our, pilot study had 6 or more, 44%. So if you're looking at controlling health care cost, if you're looking at working on childhood obesity, if you're improving the education system, all these issues really can be summarized in how do you keep these scores down for children? All right, Charisse, I asked you to look at this picture. Charisse is a graduate too, I could say that of Crittenton, but Charisse is way further in life. Charisse is in her 30s and a very successful businesswoman, actually in Utah. Her ACE score is a 9. She was physically and sexually abused. She was neglected. She was homeless. She had a history of substance abuse problems. She had an unplanned pregnancy, and educationally, she got extremely far behind. Her daughter, Charnay, graduated from college in May, and I had the opportunity to be there. Her ACE score is a 3. Basically saying we broke the cycle. The odds of Charnay having the situations, the life problems that mom has managed through, aren't there. She's a beautiful young woman. She's in college. She's a blessing in every way. But you can see the protective factors have to be in that family to prevent them from having these high scores. So it comes to, okay, we decide that we've got some high ACE scores. We realize that some of these children are high risk. How do you get from there to necessary services? How do you get there, not only to necessary service, to workforce development, to make sure that we have the right professionals in our community to help these children and families? West Virginia is very fortunate that we have an instrument called the West Virginia CANS, which stands for West Virginia Children and Adolescent Needs and Strengths. So if you look at the ACE is that snapshot picture The ACE doesn't tell me what support systems this child has. It doesn't tell me what other issues are going on in the family or home, if the kid's been in trouble or not. It just gives me a picture. The CANS is going to paint the broader picture, very much like the CANS is the movie. I know, working with judges, they want to see the whole picture when they make a decision about what should happen to a child. You heard Breauna say she felt like a criminal. Breauna was 100% victim in every way. She entered the system as a criminal because of her behavior. And we all know that children express themselves behaviorally, for good or bad. That's how they engage with their emotions. So for Breauna, you saw what happened. She ended up in a very high-risk situation. She was cooking meth at 12 and 13 in her dad's lab. When she finally got into trouble and the system caught her, what needed to happen is a thorough assessment to look at exactly what supports, what was needed. She certainly didn't need detention, she needed treatment. So the CANS can give us that picture. It can help the courts and the department and individuals who are those decision makers to figure out what it is. So basically what CANS is, it's an integrated information tool. It isn't a psychometric instrument that's going to determine personality or IQ. It's going to look at the entire family. And the reason why it's called West Virginia is because it's been adapted over the years to meet our terminology and jargon which we use throughout the state. So basically it's going to look at the child's strengths, it's going to look at the family needs, it's going to look at the behavioral emotional needs, the risks, etc. It's going to look at the caregiver strengths and needs. You may have a young person who has a wonderful support system, but is in really bad situation, making bad choices. Well, you wouldn't need to place that child outside of the home environment. You will want to support those home systems that can help that child stay where they're at. This is an excellent tool for all decision making for the schools, the courts, etc. Currently in the country, as you can see, all the purple are CANS states, states that are currently using the CANS. The tannish color, you can see Ohio and Pennsylvania, they are using it, but it isn't throughout the entire states. One of the really positive things, I think, when you look at this is you can see that many states use this. I know Allegheny County, every kid who enters their systems in any way, they use the CANS to assess them as their decision-making tool. But there's two important factors to this instrument. I think that's the beauty of it. One, utilizing this tool, you're going to get a complete picture of the youth. You're going to be able to look at quick and appropriate placement so children don't end up where they're not supposed to be for a period of time. And in addition, you can look at ongoing outcome of assessment. So you can see if a child is progressing with whatever treatment or placement they're in. The part that I'm most excited about is the system impact. If we could consistently across the board utilize this same tool, gather the data, hopefully through somewhere like WVU, analyze it, you have information now that can help you see exactly where your workforce deficits are. You can see where services are needed and where they need developed. So it's going to give you a clear picture of what's happening where in West Virginia. Basically, I'm just kind of showing that all the things that you can do from, you're looking at assessing an alignment of the family, what programs you have, and then the total system, which for you as policymakers is critical, that you'll have actual data to help you look at where services need developed. So where do we start? You know, basically, I think we all recognize that we have huge problems in West Virginia with child well-being. And we do need to look at the juvenile justice system. We need to look at the education system. But we have to begin basically with what our children are presenting. And we need to know what they're presenting and where they're presenting it at in our state. And I just kind of like this because, you know, you can't improve what you don't measure. And basically, I think we're at a point where, by the nature of this committee coming together, that we want to be serious about making a difference and improving the well-being for our children in West Virginia. And And I'm hopeful, and I'm very pleased to see that we're all I'm standing here, sharing my information with you. And I would hope that we can look at this, look at your own ACE scores in relationship, know that this is a very common tool used across the country, that these are things that we can start using in West Virginia and more seriously planning our resources around what our children need.